Good morning. Today we are going to be talking about Railroad Bill. Now you can find all kinds of information about him on the internet. You can find information in books, theater, movies have been made out about him. There's documentation about him online. The information I'm getting today is from the Encyclopedia of Alabama. I want to give credit to the source there. The Auburn University did an article on him. There's also pictures online that I'm going to show you. This is the copy of the Employees magazine from Louisville and Nashville magazine. The picture they put on their front cover. This is his grave memorial. His name was Morris Slater. This is, like I told you, music is very popular. Ramblin' Jack Elliott by Wood Guthrie and others wrote about him. Pictures. This is a railroad company document. There's another soundtrack about him. This is a book by Larry Massey. He wrote about the life and crimes of Railroad Bill. This book is very old, but you can probably find it on eBay or Amazon possibly. There's another piece of documentation from the freight. Like I said, there's train lyrics and things you can find. Okay. The legend of Railroad Bill arose in the winter of 1895 along the Louisville and Nashville Railroad line in southern Alabama, also known as L&N Railroad. Now, based loosely on the exploits of an African-American outlaw known as Railroad Bill, tales of his brief but action-filled career on the wrong side of the law have been preserved in song, in fiction, and in theater, as I mentioned before. He had been variously portrayed as a Robin Hood character, also as a murderous criminal, a shapeshifter, and a nameless victim of the Jim Crow South. Now, he was never conclusively identified, but L&N detectives claim he was the man named Morris Slater, and some residents of Bruton believed him to be a man called Bill McCoy, who was shot by local law enforcement. Now, stories about Railroad Bill began to surface in early 1895. when an armed vagrant began riding on the L&N boxcars between Flomaton and Mobile, Alabama. He earned the nickname Railroad Bill, or sometimes just Railroad, from the trainman who had trouble detaining the rifle-wielding hitchhiker. On March the 6th, 1895, railroad employees attempted to restrain a man they found sleeping on the water tank along the railroad. Now, the man fired on them and escaped into the woods after hijacking a train car. This incident sparked a manhunt by railroad company detectives that led a posse to Bay Minette on April the 6th, 1895. When detectives confronted an armed man there, he killed Baldwin County Deputy Sheriff James H. Stewart in the ensuing gunfight and evaded capture again. Now, the deputy's killing swung the full attention of law enforcement and the media towards Railroad Bill. A notice for $500 reward posted in Mobile identified him as Morris Slater, a convict lease worker who in 1893 fled from a turpentine camp in Bluff Springs, Florida, after killing a lawman there. Now, Slater had been nicknamed Railroad Time for his rapid work pace. Railroad Bill crossed into Florida where on July the 4th, 1895, Bruton Sheriff McMillan tracked him to a house near Bluff Springs. As the sheriff approached the dwelling as the sheriff approached the dwelling, Railroad Bill opened fire and disappeared in the woods, leaving McMillan fatally wounded. Now, the killing of McMillan marked a turning point and greatly expanded the efforts in both Alabama and Florida to hunt down Railroad Bill. Despite the increase in manpower, the outlaw remained at large, robbing trains and reportedly selling goods to impoverished people for prices lower than the local merchant stores, as well as engaging in occasional shootouts with lawmen and L&N authorities. Now, all the while, his legend grew, especially in Alabama's African American community. Although the majority of blacks condemned Railroad Bill's actions, many also admired his courage and audacity. Some people attributed supernatural powers to him, maintaining that he was able to evade capture by changing into animal form and was only vulnerable to silver bullets. Now, there's other tales said that he had the power to disable the tracking abilities of the bloodhounds on his trail. One such tale can be recounted by Carl Carmer in Hurricane's Children, Tales from Your Neck of the Woods. He describes a lawman chasing Railroad Bill. It says, so the sheriff decided Railroad Bill must be hiding under the low bushes in the clearing, and he began looking around. Pretty soon he started at the little red fox that lit out through the woods. The sheriff let go with both barrels of his shotgun, but he missed. After the second shot, the little red fox turned about and laughed at him on high, wild, hearty laugh, and the sheriff recognized it. That little fox was Railroad Bill. Well, by the summer of 1895, the L&N Railroad, the state of Alabama, and the state of Florida, and the town of Brewton in Escambia County had all pulled together a reward of $1,250 for Railroad Bill's capture. A host of bounty hunters from places as far as Texas and Indiana descended on southwestern Alabama and the western swamps of Florida. They were joined by operatives of the Pinkerton National Detective Agency and L&N detectives, lawmen, and vigilante posses. Now, many innocent African Americans soon found themselves paying heavily for Railroad Bill's crimes, as questionably identified suspects were brought in for the reward or were accused of being accomplices. Some of the men arrested suffered beatings or whippings, and others were murdered. On July the 16th, the Pine Belt News in Brewton ran a headline that stated, "The wrong man shot," and others reports from Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, and Texas filtered in about men killed after being misidentified as Railroad Bill. By August the 2nd, the Montgomery Daily Advisor was reported that those hunting the fugitive had become a small army numbering at least 100 men loaded for bear. The hunt for Railroad Bill persisted until March the 7th, 1896, when a man was gunned down by a host of law enforcement officials at Tidmore and Ward's General Store in Atmore, a depot town along the L&N. Now, accounts of the final episode in Railroad Bill's bloody career widely differ. Some say that authorities surprised and killed the man as he sat on an oak barrel eating cheese and crackers. Other accounts say that he engaged the lawman in a shootout in front of the store, and still others contend that he walked into a trap at Tidmore and Ward's. Railroad Bill's body was placed on public view in Brewton, and crowds of curious spectators gathered to get a glimpse. Many Brewton residents recognized the man as Bill McCoy, a local troublemaker who had threatened local sawmill owner T.R. Miller with a knife at around the same time Morris Slater was working in the Turpentine camp in Florida. Now, souvenir hunters paid 50 cents for a picture of the Constable J.L. McGowan, believed to have fired the fatal shot, standing rifle in hand over the corpse of Railroad Bill, strapped to a wooden plank. After a few days in Brewton, the body was taken by train to Montgomery and later to Pensacola, Florida, for public display. So many people came to see Railroad Bill in Montgomery that authorities charged an admission fee of 25 cents. His body's resting place is unknown. Railroad Bill was a symbol of the racial and economic divide in the post-Reconstruction Deep South. During this period of increasing legal segregation in Alabama and the rest of the South, the hunt for Railroad Bill became a theatrical white supremacist saga in the local newspapers. The outlaw's legacy had been passed down through generations in many cultural representations. Now, Railroad Bill's blues ballads began circulating in the early 20th century. One was recorded by Riley Puckett and Gid Tanner in 1924. Now, musicologist Alan Lomax recorded a version of the Railroad Bill by Painville native Vera Ward Hall in 1939. Blues singers have used Railroad Bill as a stage name, and the popularity of ballads exploded during the folk revival of the 1950s and 60s. And in 1981, the Labor Theater in New York City produced the musical play Railroad Bill by C.R. Portes. Now, if you're wanting to find more information, you can check out Burgeon Matthews, Looking for Railroad Bill on the Trail of an Alabama Bad Man. Southern Cultures, they did an article 2003. James Panick, Railroad Bill, Gulf Coast Historical Review. Railroad Bill and the Outlaw Tradition, Western Folklore by John W. Roberts in 1981. And like I said, the Encyclopedia of Alabama has a lot of information as well. You can check that out. And just go online and see all the different things that you can find out about him. Talk to you guys soon.